My name is Beck. We are here live at Franklin Park Zoo for today's live Zoo to You. And today's Zoo to You is brought to you by NEFA and the U.Fund College Investing Plan. We're here with zookeeper Brittany, who is going to be telling us all about our special guests that we're meeting here today.
Hi. I'm Brittany, and I'm one of the camel trainers here at Franklin Park Zoo, one of their keepers. They're still in their barn trying to decide if they want to come out today. Hopefully they'll make an appearance. We've got some bamboo here for them, as well as their usual breakfast of several different types of grain and some hay, Timothy hay. Here comes Zoe's just made her debut. Hopefully she'll wander over. Hi, Zoe! She's coming. So, happy early Valentine's Day. Zoe and Xander are eventually going to be a breeding pair. They're still a little bit young yet. Zoe is mature. Xander, at 4 years old, is a little bit shy. He could come into maturity this year, or it might take him another 4. Hi, you two. Camels are interesting. They're a little bit different than a lot of other animals in that it's the male that comes into season during breeding season. They go into rut and they go through a lot of behavioral changes. When Xander becomes mature, he'll become much more aggressive during the winter time, and he'll start doing a lot of really disgusting things to make himself more attractive to Zoe. My favorite being peeing on his tail and then flipping his tail upward and spraying his back with pee. Apparently smells really good to female camels. They also have a scent gland on the back of their heads, and so when he becomes mature, you might see him in the winter time rubbing the back of his head on his front hump, again to make himself smell better for Zoe. He'll also start grinding his teeth. It makes this high-pitched, almost whistle sound, and he'll foam at the mouth when he does that. So if you come to visit the zoo and you see Xander foaming, he's not rabid, he's just in rut. Let's see. The peeing behavior that they do is also interesting because they pee backwards. Most animals will pee down between their legs, but camels pee backwards out behind their legs, and that's how he's able to pee on his tail. Xander and Zoe were both born in zoos. Zoe was born in Idaho Falls, and Xander was born in Chicago, and then they came here to become a breeding pair. Most animals at the zoo belong to species survival plans. That means that we have matched them to make sure that they're genetically compatible and that their offspring will be healthy. We do this to make sure that the population as a whole is in good shape, so that if someday we're able to reintroduce animals to the wild, we're introducing animals that are the most fit and most able to survive. Xander and Zoe were likewise matched. We looked at their pedigrees to make sure that they were compatible. They're enjoying their bamboo right now. They really enjoy browse, which is any kind of plant or tree limb that we harvest to give to the animals. Not all kinds are safe for the animals, so please don't feed them things that you find at the zoo. We harvest specifically for them. But bamboo is a particular favorite, as is Russian olive and willow, which both conveniently grow near the exhibit.
So I see they're munching on some bamboo. What other kind of special treats or enrichment do these camels get?
Sure. Other kinds of enrichment include their training program. We use alfalfa cubes as their training treat typically, but we might also use different kinds of fruit or vegetables. Zoe really likes bananas. Xander likes cantaloupe, and he used to like apples, but he changed his mind recently. They do that sometimes. We also will provide different kinds of toys, so you might see balls or things that they can roll around and chase in the exhibit. And they will try to encourage them to forage for their food. So we might hide it inside of a brown paper bag or a box, something to make it just a little bit more difficult for them so that they take longer. Are there other questions?
Oh, I can think of one.
Sure.
So most people think of camels as being like desert animals. So why are they okay out here in the snow?
That's a great question. So Bactrian camels are also desert camels, but not all deserts are hot deserts. Where these guys live in the Gobi Desert in Mongolia, it can actually get very, very cold in winter. And even hot deserts will get very cold overnight. So that's why they have these big furry coats. The temperatures can range from -40 to over 100 over the course of the year. So in the spring, they shed their winter coats and they'll get completely naked for a little while, which is one of my favorite times of the year, honestly. They're very funny looking. And then they immediately start growing back their coats to get ready for the next winter. So right now they're in their winter coat phase, and come spring they'll start shedding it again. And that's another time of year when guests often come to the zoo and get a little bit worried because it comes off in these really big shaggy clumps. But again, they're okay. That's totally normal. It's supposed to do that.
So we have a question from Katrina. She asked, why does he have sawdust on his side? And do they lay on their side?
They do. So we use pine shavings in the barns to help keep the floors clean. When they pee and poop and make a mess, pine shavings make it easy to clean up. So every day we sweep up the old pine shavings and we put down fresh. Xander was clearly lying down in his pine shavings overnight. They usually, the word is called cush, which comes from the French word for lie down. They will usually sort of bend all of their limbs and just sort of rest with their chests flat on the ground. But they will occasionally, when they're feeling safe and comfortable, they'll just flop over on their sides. I've also seen them try to roll over, which they're not very good at because the humps get in the way. But when there isn't snow on the ground, there's usually sand in this part of the exhibit, and they love rolling in the sand in the summer.
By rolling in the sand, is that a method of cleaning themselves, like kind of like a cat would, or is that something completely different?
I'm honestly not sure. I imagine that rolling in the sand feels good. Maybe if they've got an itch, it probably feels kind of nice and scratchy on their humps, which are a hard spot for them to reach with their mouths or their feet.
That's awesome. So I know you mentioned these two are kind of like a Valentine's Day couple, and sometimes they might pee in each other. Is there any other displays of affection that they may do?
You'll often see them cuddling together, which is very sweet. They're not, like all couples, they do have their spats. You'll sometimes see Xander chasing Zoe around the exhibit. It's mostly playful, but you might see him kind of nipping at her back legs and running around with her. They'll then settle down and start cuddling together again or eating together like this. But they do spend a lot of time together. They're rarely apart.
We got another question that came in from Paula and asked, do they mind the snow?
The camels do not mind the snow at all. You can't really see them very well because of the snow, but they have really big, wide feet. Camels are one of the few ungulate species that don't walk on tiptoe. They walk on the pads of their feet. Most hoofed animals walk on tiptoe. So they can get through the thick, heavy snow just fine. They're much less likely to slip on ice than other hoofed animals are because of those nice big feet. During snowstorms, they can clamp their noses shut. So when there's heavy wind and there's snow or sand blowing in the air, that keeps it out of their nostrils, so they don't get grit in their lungs. Camels are one of our species that are actually sensitive to coronaviruses, and that ability to clamp their nostrils shut makes it very difficult to do a COVID test. little fun fact.
I can see Zoe digging at the ground. Is there a reason why she's doing that?
There's two possibilities. She might be trying to dig away to see if there's any hay or goodies buried under the snow. It's also something that they'll sometimes do in frustration if, maybe she's annoyed that the grain has fallen under the hay, and she's just getting a little impatient. Xander, sometimes during our training sessions, if I get distracted talking to someone, he'll not only stomp his feet, but he'll start kicking and bucking, and throwing a little temper tantrum. So I have to be careful to pay attention to him. He doesn't like sharing.
We got a question that came in from Ashley, and they asked, are these animals endangered?
That's a great question. It's a little bit difficult to answer because within recent years we learned that there are actually 2 species of Bactrian camel and not 1. They used to be classified as a single species, but now we know that there's the domesticated species, which is what Xander and Zoe are, and then there's the wild species. Xander and Zoe are Camelus bactrianus. The wild species is Camelus ferus. Camelus ferus is critically endangered. If I remember correctly, there's fewer than 1,000 of them left in the wild, and I think there's only about 30 in captivity being bred for reintroduction. Bactrian camels are much less, or the domesticated Bactrian camels rather, are much less common than their dromedary one-humped cousins, but they are still quite common and would not be considered endangered. So we have these 2 to act as ambassadors for their wild cousins because, again, there are so few of them out there. You wouldn't find them in zoos.
And you mentioned another type of camel, the dromedary. Could you tell us how to tell the difference between Bactrian camels and dromedary camels?
Sure. The difference between dromedary and Bactrian camels, the biggest and easiest one is their humps. Bactrian camels have 2 humps, dromedary camels have 1 hump. And if you ever have trouble remembering, think about the letters B and D and then flip them over on their side. B has 2 bumps and D has 1. Dromedary camels also typically live in hot deserts, so they don't get quite as shaggy, and their breeding season behaviors are quite different. They can breed. First, I'm going to apologize. I don't know quite as much about dromedary camels as about Bactrian camels. I believe that dromedary camels can breed year-round as opposed to just during the winter time. They don't really go into rut like dromedary or like Bactrian camels will, and they have these sacs in their mouths that they can inflate, and they'll kind of droop out of their mouths, and they blow those up when they're excited. And I gather that's another one of those disgusting things that female camels think is really cool.
Jen asked if there are any threats in the wild.
There are. So interbreeding with domesticated Bactrian camels is a big one for keeping the wild camels wild. And then hunting has been a pressure. I believe habitat loss has been one of the pressures. They're really only located in this one area in Mongolia, so that area needs to be protected.
And then I got another question from Laura. And she heard us talking about the virus. Do you take the test? Do you give the test to the animals at the zoo if some of them can get the virus?
If we suspect if any of our animals are showing COVID-like symptoms, yes, we would try to do a test to confirm. We also take other precautions due to the virus. We wear our masks all the time when we work with the animals, and that's another reason why it's very important when we have guests at the zoo that you follow the mask rule. You're not just protecting yourselves and the other guests, you're also protecting the animals.
Thank you everyone for joining us. It's due to you. We learned about our Valentine's Day couple. If you have any other questions, you can always ask us at zoonewengland.com.
Thanks everyone.